The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Anna Zylik. I am with ICF, and we are the vendor working on behalf of the sponsors of Energize Connecticut to bring these passive house and all-electric homes trainings to all of you. So thanks for joining us today. We will be recording this training and we will make this available afterwards. These trainings are at no cost thanks to the sponsors of Energize Connecticut and are part of a partnership with Connecticut Passive House. A reminder that as part of this training and workforce development initiative, we are offering a 75% cost reimbursement. So we increased this from the 50% for individuals pursuing either FIAS or FEE professional accreditation. So this includes the cost of the trainings and the exam. And once you become certified, we'll work with you to process the 75% cost reimbursement. So if you have any questions about that, please do not hesitate to contact us. With that, I will pass it over to Keegan, who's also with ICF, to talk about the Passive House and All Electric Homes building incentives.
Yeah, thanks, Anna. If we can go to the next slide. Thanks to everyone for joining us today. We're really excited to bring this presentation to y'all. And so in addition to this workforce development initiative and these no-cost trainings, the sponsors of Energize Connecticut also offer robust incentives for builders and developers who choose to pursue either passive house certification or building all electric homes in the state of Connecticut. So for the passive house, the incentives are for new construction multifamily buildings with 5 units or more. If we can go to the next slide. The incentives include pre-construction incentives for things like feasibility studies and energy modeling, and post-construction incentives for full passive house certification through either PHI or FIAS. Now, for all electric homes, next slide, this is for single family or multifamily buildings. And these incentives range for single family and multifamily building construction and have a set of performance requirements that you must meet in order to qualify for the incentives. One more slide. And so the incentives range for single family from $7,500 to $10,000 for level 1, level 2, $3,000 to $5,000 for single family attached buildings, and $1,500 to $2,500 per unit for multifamily buildings. So some really lucrative and robust incentives that are available for both passive house and all electric home construction in the state of Connecticut. So if for questions during today's session, please use the chat function in your GoToWebinar control panel, and Anna and I will relay them to our speakers throughout the presentation. So with that, I will turn it over to Joe and Brian. Take it away, guys.
All right, thanks very much, and thank you all for tuning in this morning. We're excited about this, and that's great news about the incentives that are available. We're going to be talking later about other incentives that come from the IRA that you should be aware of. But just for introduction, my name is Brian Stewart. I founded Electrify Now a few years ago because I was frustrated there wasn't good information, primarily for homeowners, about the advantages of electrification. So after I retired from my career at Nike, I started this volunteer organization with my wife, basically, to spread the good news about electrification. And then Joe has joined us more recently. Joe, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hey everybody, great to be on with you. I'm a passionate electrification advocate. I volunteer with Electrify Now and also work for the nonprofit New Buildings Institute, where I project manage something called the Advanced Water Heating Initiative, which is a national initiative to promote heat pump water heaters. So we'll be getting into that technology later today. Great to be on with you all.
And basically, Electrify Now, our mission is to make it really simple and easy to understand why electrification is such a benefit to homeowners from a cost, performance, and sustainability standpoint, and to help people understand how they can take action to make a difference in their own homes. And so a lot of this information is relevant whether you're a homeowner or a builder or a designer, because and today what we're really going to be talking about is how all these things are shaping the way that homes can and should be built, whether those are single family homes or multifamily homes. And so we'll be talking about the trends in home energy and building codes and legislation, some of this background stuff that's leading up to why there's such a focus on all electric homes at the moment. And then we'll talk about the advantages of all electric homes and the key technologies that it's important to be aware of that really make these things work, and why those technologies are not a compromise, but actually a performance improvement. And then we'll be spending some time talking about the IRA and how that's such a transformational piece of legislation that's going to really tilt the landscape towards building all electric and more energy efficient homes. All right, so to start out with, it feels like it's probably kind of a truth. Most people, and if you're a builder, you would probably agree that people want gas in their homes. So this whole thing seems to run a little bit contrary to maybe what some people would say is the current perception about what a premium home is. And if you ask yourself why it is that that's the case, part of it comes down to the fact that the natural gas companies have been very good at PR and marketing for nearly 100 years now, starting with Bob Hope back in the early 1900s, and all this marketing that we've sort of absorbed all the way up to the present day, when there's influencers talking about how great gas stoves are and that sort of thing. So we've been kind of fed this steady stream that natural gas is clean and efficient and it's the best way to heat our homes. And there's some truth to that we'll talk about, but there is this real effort by the industry to make sure that we believe that. And if you look at what happened in the 60s, where the electric companies and the electric utilities and the manufacturers of electric appliances teamed up with the federal government to really promote electrification in our homes, you can see what that effect had when this campaign, which was kind of maybe competitive with the gas campaign, you can see that in terms of the houses with new homes with gas ranges actually went down because of this information around electrification. So the point is that marketing does matter. It's a piece of the story, but there's also this basic facts that up until recently, gas stove has been a better solution than a electric, the old electric stoves, and gas fireplaces and gas heating has felt more premium than the electric baseboard kind of alternative. And so with this comparison of the older electric technologies to the gas technology that have been around for decades, gas kind of wins because it's cheaper and to some degree it performs better. But what's really changing is now there's new products that we'll talk about that really upend this kind of comparison between gas and electric. There's much better information about the true impacts of our gas appliances in our homes. And partly as a result of that, there's legislation that's happening all over the country, including a lot in Connecticut, that really brings focus to energy use in our own homes. And then, of course, incentives like the IRA, which we'll be talking about. On the information side, I think it's been pretty much impossible to ignore over the last couple of weeks all the crazy talk that's been going about gas stoves, and nobody's going to come take your gas stove away. But it is interesting that the Consumer Safety Board is actually even talking about the idea of potentially banning gas stove sales because of the health impacts. And the reason for this is because the amount of information that's come to light recently about the negative impacts of burning natural gas in our homes, particularly our stoves, is pretty hard to ignore. And the connection between gas stoves and asthma, particularly for children, is real. And I think a lot of parents are going to be concerned about the burning these fuels in our homes. The gas companies will tell you that it's all about ventilation, but there's really no evidence to support that. First of all, most of the hoods that are installed aren't very effective. And second, a lot of these pollutants don't ventilate well anyway. They're heavier than air. So the issue is not going to go away, that our gas stoves are a source of health problems in this country. And there's, to some degree, some of these similar issues with other gas appliances, but it's really the gas stove that is leading the charge here on the health issues around gas.
I'll just add, Brian, right before we got on this webinar, I was having a conversation with a group that is looking at the NOx emissions from water heaters not indoor necessarily because they vent, they vent outdoors, but the outdoor pollution. And so even, if there's not a health and safety reason to look at regulating gas appliances indoors, the outdoors pollution is also another big factor of gas.
Yeah, that's a good point, Joe, because, natural gas, air pollution has been largely undiscussed. People talk about, people are very aware of automobile, gas power plants, that sort of thing, industry, but our gas plants are actually a major source of air pollution in the country.
So, just to build on this, since we've seen so much coming to light over the health and safety impacts, the climate change impacts, and many impacts, a lot of jurisdictions are moving to regulate fossil fuel combustion in our homes. 33 states, including Connecticut, have a climate action plan. Connecticut getting 100% clean energy by 2040. 24 states have specific greenhouse gas reduction targets. The states have these clean energy commitments, including Connecticut, 51% of the U.S. population. And then we're seeing lots of cities and counties move towards electrification mandates for zero combustion in buildings. And 11 states have passed these electrification policies in some way, shape, or form, all starting in 2019 with the city of Berkeley, when it moved to mandate all electric in new construction. So this is happening quickly.
I'm not aware of any of that happening in Connecticut specifically, but obviously in Massachusetts and New York State, there's a lot of this going on, basically mandating all electric new construction.
So kind of build, kind of what Brian said, this new paradigm of efficient electric technologies combined with the information that of some of the effects that burning fossil fuels in our homes has, both in indoors and outdoors. We're seeing this radical transformation and a really radical shift to new electric homes. We see this in U.S. Heat pump versus gas furnace sales, where for the first time in 2022, this is almost the data for the entire year, we see heat pump sales have surpassed gas furnaces for the first time. And that's just so we're seeing the trends, and we're seeing that, looking at Connecticut's specific sources of greenhouse gas emissions, the second leading source of greenhouse gas is combustion in commercial buildings and residential buildings, 27%. And when you combine that with the greenhouse gas emissions from transportation, from electricity, from the natural gas and coal being burned for electricity, and then industrial uses, you're up to 82% of Connecticut's emissions come from burning fossil fuels. So there's a big movement to start regulating and moving away from this combustion. And there's not, of course, not only bad news, there's great news. We're seeing these trends towards, who would have thought, 10, 15 years ago, when wind and solar were some of the most expensive electricity sources on the market, that we'd see this radical transformation shift just when we needed it. Wind and solar becoming the lowest cost electricity options today, the fastest growing. 2022, we saw, I think I just saw an article that 20% of our electricity emissions, electricity is coming from renewables in the United States, and this is growing really quickly. Coal fell from 50% of our electricity mix in 2008 to under 20% today. So there's a radical shift in electricity production towards renewable energy. And, it's almost this perfect, great storm. Electric appliances that we'll be talking about in a second have gone from really wasteful and inefficient to really efficient, as evidenced by the LED light bulb, which is 5 times more efficient than the incandescent light bulb. And electric appliances have become more efficient. Renewable or electricity has gotten a lot cleaner. And so you're seeing this movement towards electrifying everything. This theory that we should power all of our homes and all of our transportation and as much industry as possible with clean, efficient, renewable electricity.
So you'll be hearing those terminology, that electrify everything, hear that more and more. It's starting to become a popular term, and it conjures up that idea of a sustainable future.
Yeah, absolutely. And just a kind of high level show that, many organizations, including the nonprofit I work for, New Buildings Institute, have shown that electrification, it's it's the best tool in our tool belt to decarbonize buildings quickly. We've got 15 studies here. We can put some in the chat, but just to know that this has been researched and studied well, that electrification is our best answer for decarbonizing the buildings in the time frame that we need.
And the best way to really understand this, I think, is to think about our own homes, and you can kind of relate anyone who's a homeowner here. But if the four biggest sources of emissions in any home in the United States are the electricity that we consume, which is typically around 3 to 5 tons of carbon emissions per year. One car, 4 to 8 tons, and most families have 2 cars. One gas furnace is pretty similar to a car in terms of the emissions it'll produce over the course of a year, and a gas water heater is surprisingly high. So these are the 4 largest sources of carbon emissions in any of our lives. And if we employ these efficiency strategies, which we've kind of grown up with this idea, like turn the lights off, get a more efficient car, drive slower, turn the heat down, take cold showers, all these things, you might reduce these numbers by 20% if you're really diligent and if you take cold showers frequently, which most people don't like doing. But we compare this with an electrification plus renewable energy strategy, and you can see how much more effective this is, because it's possible to get renewable energy. Anyone can do it today by signing up for a green power plan or putting rooftop solar on, or subscribing to community solar if that's available in your area. So you can get 100% renewable electricity. You can charge your car with that. You can use that to fuel your heat in your home and your water. And now, instead of all those numbers you saw before, we're creating zero emissions for all these 4 largest sources of emissions in our lives. And a typical home, instead of producing 20 to 30 tons of carbon emissions per year, could be producing 0. And this is what a all-electric home, a zero-energy home could also achieve this. And that's why this is such a dramatic shift in our thinking, where it's not just about efficiency. Yes, efficiency is built into this, and efficiency is important, and building homes that are well insulated, et cetera, are super important. But the way we use energy in those buildings is the thing that's really going to move the needle. And you get these huge benefits in terms of the cost of operations. These numbers here include automobile, but in general, you're going to see, and we'll talk more about this later, much lower cost to operate these homes that are run on clean renewable energy.
Right, and I'll just add that one of the beauties is that the electrification technologies have efficiency built into them. Right, your electric car is however many times more efficient than a gas car. And that's true for heat pumps, heat pump water heaters, just like the LED light bulb. So you get built-in efficiency with electrification.
Absolutely. And a lot of the times we think that these strategies to reduce our emissions involve some sort of compromise, and I think we've all, again, turning the thermostat down or wearing a sweater or something. But the truth about these all-electric homes is they're not a compromise. They're actually an important performance improvement. Sorry for the typo here, but what you're going to see with an all-electric home is, in general, more comfort and a better living experience. We'll talk about that in more detail as we go through. But that's because these devices just operate better. There's huge air quality improvements that are going to make a big difference inside homes, but also outdoors, as we talked about earlier. Lower cost of operations we talked about. And then, of course, from a sustainability standpoint, there's really no better way to go than than all-electric homes. So the technologies that really make all-electric homes possible are all ultra-high efficiency and high-performance products that we'll talk about specifically, but the heat pump water heater, the heat pumps for space heating and air conditioning, induction ranges and cooktops, electric fireplace inserts, which are less talked about, but also pretty amazing and something you should be familiar with. And then not always a really top of mind concern, but clothes drying, obviously using gas for that is not great. Electric dryers are good, but these heat pump dryers are pretty amazing. They're starting to be available. And behind a lot of these technologies are heat pumps, and those can feel really magical to people because they're a little bit hard to describe how they work. Some of you here, I'm sure, are very familiar with these, but I just like to point out to people that our refrigerators are heat pumps. This technology has been in our lives for decades and has been available for over 100 years, and it's been perfected over that time. So this is not some kind of new technology. and they're insanely efficient. Like here, just a couple summers ago, you may have read about the Portland heat dome. We had, before we turned our air conditioning on, it was almost 100 degrees in our kitchen, and our refrigerator was still making ice. So you can see that these things can make cold air even when it's hot, and obviously the opposite is also true, which we'll talk about. So they've become perfected over time, which is why the levels of efficiency that they're achieving make it so that they're cost competitive and in some cases cheaper to operate than burning gas directly in our homes.
Great. So let's dive into some of these individual technologies, and then we'll see how they all fit together into the modern electric home of the future and home of today. The heat pump water heater is something near and dear to my heart. Brian was saying to our hosts just before the call, I do have a heat pump water heater costume. I didn't bring it today, but I'm happy to. I'll put a link of me dancing in it later on in the chat. So heat pump water heater is a really game-changing appliance, just like all heat pumps. It is 3 times more energy efficient than an electric resistance or gas water heater. The only thing it exhausts is cold air, so there's interesting potential there to cool the space. It draws the heat from the ambient air, so it draws heat from the room it's in, so they work really great in basements or garages. But they can also go in utility closets, and happy to answer questions on the amount of airspace needed. But they just draw that ambient air and they exhaust cool air. They're quieter than gas power vent models. The newest, we'll see in a second, the newest heat pump water heaters are at 45 decibels, which is the range of a quiet dishwasher. And they're smart and able to be connected to the internet so that they can participate in demand response programs. Or if you want to turn down your water heater while you're away and get on your phone, they can do that too. So let's look here again on how heat pump water heaters work. They pull that air, that ambient air from whatever space they're in. And I should also say they can be ducted. So in my house, for example, this doesn't happen. It's not required too often to duct a heat pump water heater, but if you're in a tight spot, you can duct it to the outside. You pull that air into the unit. The refrigerant extracts the air, the compressor increases the temperature, and that cool air is discharged, and the heat then goes to heating the water. Most of the models on the market we'll see in just a second are what are called 240 volt heat pump water heaters. So they have they run in heat pump mode most of the time, but then they have electric resistance rods that can function as a backup. So they're just like a normal electric water heater. So let's look at the comparison of the different water heaters on the market. The 2 most, and we might even say 3 most common water heaters are, you can see on the left side, the electric storage water heater with the electric resistance rods. It's at about a water heating efficiency is measured in UEF, and so 0.90 is the electric storage UEF. And you can see tankless.
These are kind of typical numbers, but you can, obviously there'll be a range of efficiencies for each of these devices, but these are kind of very typical standard ones.
Right, exactly. Yeah, thanks for that. Right. So you may see lower than that on any of these, or higher. So you can kind of see the range there. I won't read out all the numbers, but you can see how heat pump water heaters are, 3 to 4 times more efficient than any other type of water heater. And Brian just put the numbers, the cost. The one challenge with heat pump water heaters is the upfront cost. You can get your electric or the premium gas storage there for around $1,000, sometimes cheaper, the tankless as well. But the really efficient electric and gas water heaters are more expensive, and those are a little more cost comparable to the 1,700. But as we'll talk about in a second, there are great rebates, 30% tax credit, on heat pump water heaters now, so that can take a chunk out of the upfront cost. But then the operating costs are where you really see amazing savings. So you can see that the electric water heater, you're close to $500 a year in operating costs. The tankless and gas storage, the one right next to the electric tank is the electric tankless. So that you're seeing a lot of very expensive operating costs. Gas, for these efficient gas models, it's a little bit cheaper in the $200 range, but look at the The heat pump water heater is $100 to operate yearly. So you're looking at, Energy Star says that a family of four will save $470 a year over an electric water heater, and you're looking at a couple hundred in savings. The higher upfront cost is paid for really quickly in a matter of years with the heat pump water heater. And of course, these costs will vary by the part of the country that you live in, but these are just general savings that you can expect. And then, of course, this shows carbon emissions. Electric water heaters with 2 tons. The gas water heaters, even these efficient ones, close to 2 tons. Heat pump water heaters are 0.5 tons a year of carbon emissions, and of course that can go to 0, like Brian said, if you combine it with renewable energy. So much to celebrate with heat pump water heaters. Just wanted to give a little landscape of what heat pump water heaters are on the market today. The big 3 makers are Rheem, A.O. Smith, and Bradford White. You can see starting from the left. Rheem is available in the Home Depot, and as of 2022, they just announced their Rheem 120 volt plug-in water heater. So you can actually plug that into an outlet that's probably not necessary for new construction where you can just run the 240 volt, but these work great in retrofits, especially in gas markets. A.O. Smith just released their latest Voltex AL water heater. I happened to write an article about it. And that is a lot of exciting things, like they have water connections both on the top and the side. It's 0 clearance. It's 45 decibels of sound, so a really fantastic water heater. Bradford White is only sold to contractors through distributors, but a really great water heater as well. And then just wanted to highlight that there are split system heat pump water heaters where the tank and the condenser are separate. This is the Samco 2, which is where the condenser is outdoors and the tank is indoors, but there's also Nile water heaters where the condenser has to be in a semi-conditioned space as well. So lots of options, and increasingly more so for heat pump water heaters. Okay, I've been rambling on heat pump water heaters.
All these come with 10-year warranties, so I think that's can be an important thing to point out with these things. This technology is a little bit newer in the water heater space, heat pumps, but these have been around for about 10 years now, and the warranties are really bomb-proof. And so the products are really not something that should be considered to be, like newfangled or radical.
Right, and just on that, the typical water heater warranty is 6 years, so they have higher warranties than typical water heaters. All right.
Space heating, and air conditioning, heat pumps, again, you're coming to the rescue. You can heat and cool with one system, which is fantastic. No other technology can do that. One of the things that we find about these, and we hear consistently, and we've experienced in our own home, is that because these things tend to operate at a lower heat output than a gas furnace, which is producing literally thousands of degrees when you ignite it, it's a more constant warm air that's flowing through your house, so you have more air movement. And that there's 2 really good things that come with that. One is you get more consistent temperatures. You don't get hot and cold spots so much in rooms. You also get more air moving through filters, which means cleaner air. So there's a lot of things that add up to a better feeling in the home, a more consistent temperature instead of that on-off that's typical with gas furnaces. And this makes a home feel more comfortable. There's 2 really major configurations of heat pumps. There's the ducted ones where you've got the outside unit and then inside air handler that's blowing warm air through ducts. And then in the other configuration, the outside unit that's got pumping refrigerant to a wall-mounted head. Sometimes those heads can be put into ceilings, et cetera. And there's combinations of these systems that you see. I think for new construction, any one of these systems could be appropriate. Both of them have the same effects. One of the questions that we get asked a lot is, well, will heat pumps work in cold climates? And I think part of the reason that this is such an important question right at the top of mind here in the United States, not so much in other countries where nobody asked that question, but here they were really first introduced in the country as a cooling option because they're so much more efficient than a lot of typical air conditioning products. So they were most popular in the South. And so those units didn't have a high heating load. So the products that were being manufactured in this country for the market were focused on cooling and not so much on heating. And that's starting to change now. And so it's really important that if you're in northern part of the United States, and Connecticut is in zone 5 here, which is still pretty moderate compared to Maine or Minnesota. But you have some heating days that you need to take care of for sure. It's similar to what's happening here on the West Coast. You need a heating a system that's designed for heating, and I think this is where the perception can be from the old days is problematic, because if you've got a unit that was designed really for cooling, it's not going to be very good at heating. But the new systems, particularly the cold climate heat pumps, are designed for heating in mind. They're purpose built to excel at heating, and they're called cold climate heat pumps, but we're seeing them being employed all over the place just because they're so efficient. And in general, what this means, a cold climate heat pump is going to be somewhere between 75 and 95% of its rated capacity at minus 13 degrees F. So basically what that means is that in most places of the country, you do not need any kind of heating backup. The heat pump itself is going to take care of all the heating loads and of course all the cooling loads. And there's things that make these things work, the inverters and the cold climate programming. They've got really intelligent defrost cycles. They can be more expensive up front than a lower cost conventional heat pump, but they do have much lower operating costs, which again can pay for the difference in the upfront costs. So the cold climate heat pumps are really revolutionizing the heating space, and more I think what's happening is that the cold climate standard is going to be almost like pretty much the go-to product unless you're in the southern part of the United States where you don't really need it.
Hey, Brian, real quick on that note, I just wanted to highlight the comfort of heat pumps is that Brian talked about earlier. There's no sacrifice, and I can just speak to that. For years, we've had our ductless heat pumps for 10 years now, and I would always turn them off at night. And we just did a webinar with Efficiency Maine that study the best way to run a heat pump is to leave it on all the time, set it and forget it, they say. It's changed our life. My wife is so much happier. We set it and forget it. And I just got my December, January electric bill. It was 20% lower than last year where I was turning it off at night. So increased comfort on your heat pump. And I just learned something recent. So. Yeah,
really good. And by the way, if they work in northern Maine, they're going to work pretty much anywhere. And we had some really good conversation with the Efficiency Maine folks who have had really good success installing them in homes in Maine.
Okay, Joe? Are you doing induction?
Oh, is that me? Sure, I can do induction. Okay, so induction cooking. So again, this has been all over the news. So there's been, I guess it's sort of good in some ways, but I think there's been a lot of silly conversations about it as well. I don't see that there's anything really to talk about here other than the fact that induction just is so much better technology than gas, that all the people who are sort of like complaining about potentially taking their gas stoves away, obviously those people haven't tried induction because it's just so much better. We used to be gas stoves snobs in our home, and I think if you grew up with an electric resistant stove, it's easy to see why people love gas. But as soon as you experienced induction, gas will feel like dinosaur technology because of a few basic things. One, you have much more precise temperature control. It's way faster to heat up, but also faster to cool down, which means that you won't burn things accidentally. It's way easier to clean. You're talking about literally a sheet of glass compared to anyone who's spilled pancake batter on their gas stove knows what a pain in the butt that is. Much safer because there's really essentially no hot surfaces here other than the pan, which we'll talk about. And they don't produce any of these nasty emissions that we were talking about, carbon monoxide and nitrous oxides in particular. And then they don't leak methane. One of the things we've learned recently is that gas stoves are continually leaking methane even when they're not on. And it doesn't matter whether it's a new one or an old one or an expensive one or a cheap one, they all leak because of if you think about it, think about all the little fittings that go on in there. It's not too surprising.
And they're just now studying real quick, what's in the methane they're leaking, things like benzene, and we're seeing lots of studies.
All sorts of nasty things are in there. So basically, it's this glass surface with these magnetic coils underneath that excite the molecules in the pot. The pot has to be stainless steel or cast iron, not aluminum or copper, but you don't really want to be using aluminum pots anyway. Those are really dangerous. So really, the only people that might suffer in terms of having to if they love their copper pots, but these other pots are amazing. And the pot gets hot, not the surface. And there's lots of performance stats to mention, but this is the one that I think is the most compelling, that an induction range, even a decent induction range, is going to be about twice as fast to boil water as even a really big gas burner or an electric resistance burner. So once you get used to this, it's like pretty hard to go back. They come in a lot of different models, of course, and the offerings are getting better and better all the time. They started pretty much at the high end, but now you're starting to see these really good models that starting at around $100,000. Samsung just came out with this one with really nice knobs and beautiful finish for just over $1,000. But you can see that you can spend anywhere up to $6,000 if you really want that kind of high-end sort of wolf range look, 36-inch range. It's possible to achieve that with induction as well.
Great. Yeah, and just one last thing to say there. We have been, I'm sure many of you have read in the news, and we've talked to some of the manufacturers as well. There's some interesting new induction stoves coming out with a battery backup. They're more for the retrofit market, but they have a 4 kilowatt-hour battery that can just plug into a regular outlet. So we're kind of tracking that, but lots of new ideas and are coming out with this electrification technology. Let's two more quick things to touch on. The electric fireplace inserts. Wow, we're going to look at a case study in a second, but these things blew my mind. When Brian was raving about electric fireplaces, I was kind of dismissive, and then when I saw them live, I knew we had to get one for our house as well. The technology has improved immensely here. The flames are super realistic. You can turn them up or down as you want. You can turn them on without heat and then run them in the summer. They're usually 110 volts. They're again safer than other types of fireplaces, and then all the variety of colors they come in can be really fun. My kids love changing our fire to become blue and purple. So really exciting electric fireplaces these days.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times if you go into a hotel or something and you see a fireplace, oftentimes that'll be electric. So I think more and more it's hard to tell the difference between the electric and the gas ones.
Right, exactly. And then the final electric technology to chat about is our heat pump dryers. These are the most nascent, I would say, of the heat pump technologies. At least here in the United States, there are lots of European and Asian manufacturers. They usually come in compact sizes because in most of the other world they don't have our Manga standard sized dryer. But now with the Inflation Reduction Act, we'll see in a second that there's a tax credit for heat pump dryers, that we expect to see more standard sized dryers. These are like other heat pumps. They use 75% less energy. No venting is required, so that works great for apartments. There's slightly longer drying time. They're required to be under 90 minutes by Energy Star certifications, but it depends on the size load. We recently bought one ourselves. And again, typically they're available in the compact size now, but we're expecting to see higher standard size dryers, and some that are hybrid that have heat pump technology but can go into electric resistance if the user needs a faster drying time. Oh, great! And these technologies are really available in everyone's favorite brand has these both kitchen and heat pump technologies, and so more every day there are new products on the market. So lots to no sacrifice or compromise with these technologies. Okay, so now we're going to be getting into a little bit of the portion on for builders and the Inflation Reduction Act. We've seen these studies that we mentioned before. All electric homes are cheaper to build. RMI did a study looking at 9 cities and showed that the savings from not having to put gas infrastructure in was averaged to about 5% lower cost for the infrastructure and the appliances, and then operating costs were close to 15% lower for all electric homes. That might not be a huge deal for builders, but that's something to sell to owners. For these all electric homes, you're going to be spending on average 15% less.
Yeah, and you can see obviously that comparison can change from from location to location. We don't have any Connecticut specific data for you, but in general, I think it's safe to say that it's at least going to be similar in costs and very likely to be cheaper. And one of the main reasons that drives the lower cost for building is that you don't have to pay for the gas hookup. So while some of these appliances might be slightly more expensive, the savings from not having to hook up to the gas system is really significant. And I don't know what's going on with Connecticut specifically around gas hookups and incentives for gas hookups, but in many parts of the country, including here in Oregon, and California's already done this, that those line extension allowance incentives for connecting to the gas system are getting smaller or going away completely, which is going to tilt the playing field towards electrification even more strongly from a cost standpoint. Okay, so on the Inflation Reduction Act, I mean, this can be, we could spend a lot of time talking about this, so we're going to kind of fly over this a little bit because there's a lot to talk about. A lot of this information that we're going to share here comes from a partner organization we work with really closely, Rewiring America, who was very influential in getting these credits included in the Inflation Reduction Act. They have a great calculator product that you can, Google Rewiring America IRA calculator, and if you're interested in your own personal situation, I'll tell you what's available to you. You can put your zip code in, your homeowner status, and your household income level, and it'll tell you what you can expect in terms of the IRA. So that's a great product. But today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about these basically 4 chunks of money that come with the IRA. There's these low income allocated funding for consumer rebates that are called HERA and homes. That's the first one. Then there's consumer tax credits that are available to anyone who has a financial a tax bill. Then there's these new energy home credits that are focused on builders. And then there's some workforce and manufacturing programs that won't affect us necessarily directly, but indirectly are going to have a big effect on making electrification and clean energy technologies more available and lower cost. So if we start with these HERA rebates, there's $4.5 billion that was devoted to this, but you have to keep in mind that this is going to be spread across all 50 states. So it's not going to be as much money as we want, but for low income or income qualified families, there's some amazing potential for instant rebates that are going to lower the cost of new construction and also upgrades for homeowners. So this will apply to new construction, but it's really hard to say exactly how it's going to work. Each state has to work out their own rules, apply for funding from the Department of Energy. So I don't think we're really going to know what this looks like until later this year at a state level. But in general, there's going to be quite a bit of funding for all these technologies that we just talked about, including weatherization that we didn't really focus on for these income qualified homes. And it is going to apply to new construction as long as the home buyer, the tenant, meets these income criteria. These rebates have to go directly to the home buyer. So there's no, this isn't a builder incentive, this is a homeowner incentive. There are similar rebates that have to do with upgrades for income qualified homes, and this would not apply to new construction, but significant remodeling would, and basically because it requires a sort of before and after energy measurement picture, but there's significant dollars here, again, for a lot of these same technologies we're talking about that would apply in this situation. Then there's the tax credits. So again, this will only apply to existing homes, but this is where the largest portion of the spending that's associated with this will get applied. So in a lot of ways, this is what's going to really move the needle. It's great that we have those income qualified dollars because we need that for that portion of the community who's going to have trouble maybe making these switches. But for people who don't have those income qualification levels, these tax credits are incredible and really essentially are going to eliminate the cost premium for these technologies that we've just talked about, and also enable upgrades that might include electrification issues like panel upgrades and wiring, etc., Also, these things have annual limits, so a homeowner can do a little bit this year and then come back and take advantage of these credits more the next year. But again, this will not apply to new construction.
Our friends at Rewiring call it a bank. The idea is like a bank. You can get your heat pump water heater this year and get your 30% tax credit. Next year, do your heat pump. So that's exciting. Yeah, these. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Then there's solar energy and storage. Some of you may know that the federal incentives here were set to eclipse at the end of 2022, I believe. And so now, at the end of 2021, these went back and retroactively went through 2022. And now these 30% federal income tax credits apply to solar and storage and go all the way out to 2035. And these will apply to new construction as well as existing homes. And then the builder energy efficient homes tax credits. So these would be in addition to the credits that we were just talking about the beginning of the program that were Connecticut specific. So you can layer these things, but basically it's a tax credit of up to $5,000 for energy efficient homes that meet these criteria of either Energy Star level new construction or zero energy ready homes. And this works for multifamily as well as single family buildings, and as long as these prevailing wage requirements are met. And Joe, did you have something to add here on terms of?
Just the exciting, it's the electrification technologies that we've been harping on for this hour so far are provide some of the easiest pathways to get certification for Energy Star new construction zero energy ready homes. So the points that you get for your heat pump water heater or heat pump are going to get you these certifications, as you all probably know, and get you these tax credits. So that's really exciting. And I will put links in the chat to both of these and the updates on the IRA.
And then there's a few things that I think is just good to know about. There's these workforce incentives for states to develop programs for workforce training, because I think there's a lot of realization that we need more people who are qualified to install these technologies that we've just been talking about. So there's workforce development trainings that obviously also help maybe create a more diverse workforce in these areas. And then there's these installer rebates that are built in, particularly on the HERA side of things, so that it's not just the homeowner that's getting an incentive. The installer is actually receiving an incentive for putting in these efficient technologies. And then there's other things that were part of the Defense Reduction Act, which it has a lot of money that's meant to boost domestic manufacturing of heat pumps. And also there's challenges to get the cost of heat pumps, cold climate heat pumps, to be lower. So there's really good investments from the Department of Energy there. There's these manufacturing tax credits that are bringing a lot of new factories and production to the United States. Like you see it all the time, a lot of battery manufacturing, for example, solar panel manufacturing. It's really spurring the domestic manufacturing of these clean energy technologies here in the country, which is, again, is going to have great side benefits in terms of jobs and lower costs and better, stronger, more robust supply chains for these important technologies. And then there's these huge loan programs that are available in the clean energy space, which also are going to really boost domestic manufacturing of these clean energy technologies. So there's a lot in, I think basically I've been hearing from people who really study this closely that people are saying that the IRA is probably the most significant environmental legislation that has been passed in the history of this country. And people are projecting really transformational impacts of this in terms of not only the products that we have in our homes, the way our homes are built, but the way the manufacturing landscape looks in this country and how much new availability there will be for good clean energy jobs because of this legislation. So it's super exciting.
So exciting. And then why don't we just go through this really quickly? We just wanted to show a couple, case studies featuring the all electric technologies that we've been talking about so far, and all sort of price levels for these end housing types. So this is Going Street Comments, more the deluxe price level
Yeah, you can see that 36-inch Bosch range there. That's kind of like similar to the one that we were showing. It's more high-end looking.
Yeah. And then this was a little bit lower cost, but with solar included as well, with all the other electrification technologies. Again, here in Portland. And
then this is almost more like a really small, almost like ADU style development. Again, all electric, really trying to hit the more affordable cost price points, but you can see just really nice finishes and all electric. And then something kind of in the middle with these more townhome type examples. And then we just highlight here in this Ichijo house, all the electrification technologies and an incredible electric fireplace that totally changed my mind on electric fireplaces. Yeah, Ichijo is really interesting because they're one of the largest home developers in the United States, and mostly here on the West Coast, but up in the Seattle area, they're doing like a 400 home, all electric home development. This one here in Oregon was more like 22 homes. It was their first all electric home development in Oregon, but they're really excited about these technologies and have been kind of at the forefront of bringing these modern building materials, but also these modern appliances. And like I said, they're really gung-ho on all electric construction. We don't have any examples of this gives you a little bit of a range of what is available out there. Is again, this is that electric fireplace insert that Joe is excited about here. It's become standard with the Ichijo models. And we don't have examples in this deck of multifamily, but of course there are many examples of all electric multifamily, and we can speak to that if necessary. But want to give some time for Q&A. Thanks so much. Yeah, thank you, Nick. Of course, we have tons of information on our website, and we also have webinars on where we do deep dives on all these topics that we've talked about and more. So if you're interested, you can go to electrifynow.net and find out more information. But thank you very much, and I'd love to take some questions. And yeah.
Yeah, guys, great presentation. Thank you so much. We've definitely got a few questions. We probably won't get to all of them. So we do distribute the slide deck to everyone that was registered for today's webinar. So we could potentially try to do some Q&A, answer the Q&A, and send that out as part of the slide deck for those questions that we don't get to. So yeah, first question for Joe and Brian. Does the IRA include anything for homeowners who need to upgrade their electrical panel in order to make some of these transitions to electrification?
Yes, the short answer is yes. The longer answer, and we did a whole webinar on this exact topic, and I have to say it really changed my thinking about electrical panel upgrades, because I think a lot of the knee-jerk reaction is more electricity, more electric devices, you need a bigger panel. And in some older homes, like if you've got a 100 amp panel, maybe that's the case. But there's a lot of really new solutions that are enabling whole home electrifications with 100 amps. And it basically comes back to circuit sharing devices, because, for example, I don't think most people would consider it a big problem if you couldn't charge your car and run your dryer at the same time. But the idea that we have to be able to have all these devices turned on and drawing their maximum load all at the same time is kind of a prehistoric idea, but a lot of the building codes initially were set up that way. But there's these new smart panels and these new circuit sharing devices, and there's a lot of information on what's called the watt diet to enable homes to be able to electrify for 100 amps. So I think it's, the first question should be, do I really need to upgrade my panel? And hopefully the answer most of the time will be no. But if you do, there is money in the IRA specifically for that. And I'll just add quickly, the heat pump water heaters are case in point. There's a 30 amp, 240 volt heat pump water heater and a 15 amp heat pump water heater. 15 amp really works. It has a little bit less electric resistance backup, but I run mine in heat pump mode all the time. So yeah, there are on the watt diet, there's real easy ways to get versions of these electric technologies where you don't have to upsize the panel.
And what would you say to folks who are interested in making the transition but want to have some of the assurances of some type of backup option in the event of like a power outage? There's obviously propane generators and things like that, and then there's battery storage, which can be expensive depending on the type of equipment. So what are your thoughts or suggestions?
Yeah, that's a great question. And first of all, I think it's always important to really be honest that gas homes aren't much better than electric homes if the power goes out. Your furnace doesn't work. If you've got a good water heater, it won't work. Your gas stove will work, and maybe your gas fireplace will work if you can light it manually. But anything that has electronic ignition or a fan isn't going to work. So there's this perception that a gas home is more resilient, but it's not really that true. So that's one thing. But regardless, I mean, we get power outages here frequently in the Portland area because of the winter wind storms, particularly ice storms. So I get it that power outages are no fun. So you mentioned propane backup. You know, I'm not a big fan of propane, but that's a pretty good use for propane because you're not going to use it very often. But I think the thing that's out there that's really the most exciting thing, unfortunately, it's not here yet today, but the future is absolutely that our electric cars will be the backup systems for our homes. You've probably seen the Ford F-150 has that function already built into it. We have friends who powered their homes during power outages with their pickup truck. Basically, the batteries that are in that thing would run your entire home for up to a week, probably, if you've got a modest sized home. So I think in general, what we're going to see is this vehicle to home is going to be the backup systems for all of us, because you've got more batteries in your car than you would ever be able to afford if you were just building a battery backup system for your home that rarely gets used anyway. So that's going to be a really efficient use of batteries and a great way to get resilience without having to really build anything specific for it.
And if you combine that, you know, with the solar panels on your rooftop, extra resilience, and then I'll just say one other plug. We've done a webinar on some resilience hacks. You know, there are some ways, you know, beyond the huge battery you're going to get in your car, some of these 1 kilowatt-hour batteries. Partnered, Brian's got a great little induction hob that you can plug into his battery. So there's also hacks beyond the big home batteries.
Yep.
Great. Yeah, thank you. I think we got time for maybe one or two more. Where does, for the heat pump dryers, where does the moisture go if there's no exhaust on those?
Yeah, great question. The heat pump dryer collects and condenses the moisture, and then it drains out usually where your washer drains out. So I've got a little tube on mine, and you just connect it to where the washer drains, and it drains out. There's an option if you don't want to connect that tube or can't for some reason, that it would go into this container. You empty it after every cycle, but most people just connect the tube to where the water drains out.
Great.
Yeah, I mean, it's
cool.
It's a good point. You know, heat pumps in general are dehumidifying. So one of the nice things about the heat pump water heaters, for example, is, you know, here in Portland, which, you know, water in your basement is not unusual during the rainy season. There are your heat pumps dehumidifying the space. So there can be some advantages to that too. If humidity is a problem, all heat pumps have that function that they're going to withdraw humidity from the air, and that's why they have the condensate pumps that need to be drained.
Great. Last one, if we can get it in here quickly. What do you recommend for the heat pump water heating applicability in multifamily buildings where you might not have, the space that you have in a single family home?
Sure. This is a tough nut to crack that we're working on a lot at the Advanced Water Heating Initiative. There are some really great central heat pump water heater systems that work well, and they've been shown that are up and down the west and east coast. So you can do a central water heating system, and then in unit water heaters, if you have your water heater in a smaller space, you may be looking at some ducting. There are the split systems that we talked about, but we're also seeing a lot of form factors, a lot of new heat pump water heater types coming onto market and designing as well. So if folks are curious, just Google Advanced Water Heating Initiative and have thoughts on some of the problem areas in multifamily water heating. We'd always love to hear opinions because we're working directly with manufacturers to design for every use case.
Yeah, and also I would just say I would sign Joe up to answering your specific questions on that, because he's going to be able to point you to all the resources that are available for solutions in that space. So email him.
Yeah, great. Thanks so much. Well, yeah, that brings us to 1 minute after 1 o'clock. So Joe and Brian, thank you so much for joining us today. This was great. For everyone in attendance, we will have the link to the recording as well as the slide deck distributed to everyone who registered. Yeah, so you can access it there or distribute it through your network. But Joe, Brian, thank you again. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thanks
And
for
good luck,
having us.
everyone, with your electrification projects. Hope to see you soon.
Thanks. Have a good one.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, Anna. Bye.